This is an antique parlor table that I'm restoring for my friends at Beyond Grandma's House Antiques in Chicago. It's a beautiful table. If you can see beyond the scratches, the worn out finish, the chipped inlay, and every single joint on the table is either loose or separated. This table was made by the Wolverine Manufacturing Company over 100 years ago. The Wolverine Manufacturing Company was organized by Frederick B. Smith in 1887. He started the furniture company with 12 men and $10,000. The company specialized in manufacturing library and parlor tables. By 1908, Wolverine claimed to be the largest manufacturer of its kind in the world. The company was out of business by 1919. This is not a huge project, but there are a lot of details, so let's get started. By looking at the edge of the circular top, I can see that this is plywood, and the inlay flowers are pieced veneer. This means that I have to be very careful when sanding. I'll use 220 grit paper on my orbital sander to remove the finish. I'm applying a light, even pressure. If you're too heavy-handed in this step, you're going to sand through the veneer and it will stand out in the finish like a sore thumb. At this point, I can see all those white spots and scratches are coming off nicely. Once I have it sanded enough, I'm going to clean it using some paint thinner. This also gives me a glimpse of what it's going to look like after I apply the finish. Wow, that looks amazing. The inlay flowers look really nice, and you can even see the green leaves and the red dots in the flowers. At least now I know that I'm not wasting my time and that there is going to be a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. Now I'm going to need to make all kinds of repairs to this table. It's best to remove the top at this point. I need to figure out a way to repair the missing inlay pieces. Since I don't have any matching veneer, I've decided to fill in all the missing leaves and petal pieces with a wood filler. I like to use this wood filler. It's made for floors. It has a more liquid viscosity than regular wood putty. It trowels on nicely, and it's not only going to fill in the missing veneer, but also the small spaces in between the flowers that have dried and slightly shrunk over the years. It dries in a few hours and can be sanded off almost completely. You will see some spots in the wood grain, but don't worry, you won't see them after the stain is applied. Now for the stain, I'm using this Varathane Gel Red Cabernet color. It is a little too dark for my taste, so I'm going to dilute it with some paint thinner. While the stain is drying, I'm going to start working on the base. All of the joints are loose on this table and need to come apart. If you re-glue dowels like this, it's a good idea to drill out the old glue. A lot of sandpaper that you buy is made cheaply. I find that the most durable sandpaper is from sanding belts. I like to cut them in strips. You can even use old belts for this purpose. After removing most of the old finish with 150 grit belt strips, I go over it again with some finer 180 or 220 grit paper. When I'm working on a project that requires lots of re-gluing like this parlor table, I think it's a good idea to stain it first, and I'll even throw on a coat of wipe-on polyurethane. The reason I do this is because when you're gluing joints and the glue leaks out and absorbs into the wood, if you don't wipe it off completely and thoroughly, even a dried small amount is going to stand out when you stain. So by staining first, I don't have this issue. The joints here where the legs are connected to the top are all loose. Instead of taking them completely apart, I'm going to squirt glue into the joints and use a blade to get all the way down in. Once I have all four legs on both sides with glue, I use this band clamp to squeeze and hold them together to dry. You see all that wood glue oozing out? That's why I stained and applied a coat of wipe-on poly first. No matter how hard I try, there always seems to be a little glue left behind. I found this weight to put pressure on the joints and they closed up nicely. While the table base is drying, I'll work on the tabletop again. I could put 3 coats of poly on it. Instead, I decided to use an epoxy resin. This is a product by a company called Let's Resin. I've used it a couple times and I really like it. In a couple weeks, I plan to release an epoxy basics video so you can see more details on this process. Basically, epoxy is a two-part resin. I thoroughly mix 2 equal parts. There's 1,000 small bubbles in there, but they will dissipate as you go through the process. I'm using a propane torch to pop the bubbles. If you look closely, you can see them just disappear. In 24 hours, this thing will be ready to assemble.
Ta-da! Wow, Tyler, it's beautiful. Holy cow. Man, compared to how it was, Jesus.
What started as an unrecognizable, rickety piece of junk is now on display and available for sale at Beyond Grandma's House Vintage Antiques and Collectibles in Chicago.
Hi, welcome to Beyond Grandma's House. Is there anything in particular that you're looking for?